Hello and welcome to the Love with Bipolar podcast. My name is Ana Ruiz and I am your host. So, this is a place where we have the conversations about love and relationships while living with bipolar. So, if you're currently living with bipolar, or if you have a loved one or are in a relationship with someone with bipolar, or you just want to learn about these topics, you are in the right place and you're welcome here. So, if you're watching for the first time, a little bit about myself. I was diagnosed with bipolar type 1 disorder 19 years ago. I was 33 years old at a time, and I've been in a healing journey ever since. I am currently married, and I have been with my husband for 7 years. And I'm also a relationship coach for women living with bipolar. So, today's episode, we're going to talk about a topic that I hear quite often from women living with bipolar, and that is feeling like a burden in the relationship. And it could be either the romantic relationship with their family, their friends, and it does make a lot of sense why we feel that way. And to feel like a burden, it means like our needs are too much, and we feel like we're putting on too much onto the other person. And it happens because, well, there are many reasons. For one is if you grew up with parents who either felt overwhelmed, were busy, or they just didn't know how to parent. And let's be real, parenting is hard. You probably grew up feeling like a burden, like your needs were too much. And then you continue to grow up. Eventually, you're diagnosed with bipolar. And then there's like all these other needs that people with bipolar have that most other people don't have. And and it's just unique to our journey. And especially when we're having symptoms, when we're having manic episodes, we may have more needs than usual, and we may feel like it's too much for our partners. Or in some cases, we are just afraid that our partners will get tired and that they will leave. And that fear is real. I remember when my husband and I started dating, and just right away, I told him about my diagnosis, and he just wanted to know like what to do, what signs to look for. And even though I tried to explain things to him just to the best of my knowledge, it wasn't until it was a year and a few months into our relationship that I had a manic episode and I needed to be hospitalized. So that's when he was just really faced with the reality of just like what it takes to take care of someone going through a manic episode. And there's no textbook or manual that was going to help him. He followed his intuition and his what he knows. He asked people, and he did a great job. Um, and it was interesting because when and he had to do things um, like visits. He had to bring me clothes and figure out what to bring me, and and he also had to figure out how to reach out to my family, and he had no phone numbers for anyone in my family. So he had to figure all that. He also reached out to my boss. Back then, I used to work in software. So he had to figure out how to navigate all of that and protect my privacy and what I was going through. So he just did all of that on his own. And I remember when I left the hospital and I came home, one of the first things that he told me was, we need to have a conversation. And I just remember my heart just beating really fast because I thought, okay, this was just too much. He's gonna break up with me. This is gonna be the end of another yet another relationship. And instead, when we sat to have that conversation, he said, we need a better plan. He said, the fact that I just didn't know what to do, I didn't know um, all these things about you. He's like, I didn't have phone numbers. I had to hack your phone to get some your family phone numbers and your emergency contacts out of your phone. And for once, I felt a sense of relief, and I said, yes, let's have a plan. And by the way, we've gone through like iterations of that plan and added more phases to it as my needs have changed over the years. Um, but here's the reality of it. If you have someone who is going through cancer and they're having radiation or chemotherapy, and physically you will know that they have needs, that they need a special care. And when someone is going through a mental illness, specifically bipolar, those physical signs might not be there. So if you need to sleep, let's say you're going through depression and you need to spend more time sleeping, other people might not understand and just think that you're lazy when you just have a need to rest. So again, it's not about comparing ourselves with someone who has cancer, but just being aware that our needs might not always be visible. Um, and and also the point is not to compare ourselves with someone without a mental illness because of course their needs are going to be different. And in fact, two people with bipolar disorder might have different needs. So the point is to accept that we have needs and learn to be okay with that because um, those needs are not going to go away. And and when we feel like a burden, there's actually a gift in disguise, and you may not have looked at it this way before, but here's my invitation to see the gift that is behind feeling like a burden. And the gift is if we didn't have that part that protects us, that makes us feel like a burden, what would happen? We would probably be selfish. We would be exploiters. We would take from people and take and take and take and take, and they would get tired of us and probably leave. So the fact that we feel like a burden is a way to just protect us from taking on too much from other people. And yeah, so here's these are three things that I invite you to do if you're someone who feels like a burden. So number one, connect with this part of you that feels like a burden. Because as I said, there's nothing wrong with it. You can't get rid of it. That is a part of you, and you can't ignore it or suppress it. So by connecting to it, what I mean is just taking a few minutes to close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, notice your body, and find this part in your body that feels like a burden. Like I know for me, it feels like a tension in my solar plexus. But just notice that part and then talk to it. Say things like, I see you. Thank this part of you for not making you a selfish person. And just say thank you. Thank you for what you do to protect me. And and honor this part of you and ask this part, what do you need? What are you afraid of? And these are ways to build a connection with that part. If you've never done any kind of work like that before, um, you're going to need to practice several times and eventually you will connect to it and be able to talk to it. Just be patient. But it takes practice, and eventually you will be able to communicate with that part and just honor it and say thank you instead of like trying to push it away or try to get rid of it. Then the next part is notice how you are when it comes to receiving. Because chances are, if you are in a relationship, men have a natural instinct to protect and to provide. So if you are someone that is blocking receiving, just be aware of that part in yourself and have a vulnerable conversation with your partner because chances are they are noticing when you don't receive and they're feeling it and they're wondering what's going on. So have a conversation with them and say, "Hey, can I share something with you?" And say, "Hey, I have just noticed that I block receiving. I block receiving from you." And just say, "Can you help me?" So have a conversation with them. And along of that, if you are with a partner who is generous in just giving and caring for you, also find out what is it that they need so that they don't get resentful. For example, in my relationship, I know that for my husband, it's important to feel seen and to feel appreciated. So I thank him for the small things that he does and the bigger things. I thank him for everything. And the way that I thank him is I slow down and maybe I put my hand on his hand or his arm. And instead of just saying thank you or thank you for everything that you do, I will just be very specific and say, "Hey, thank you for bringing me clothes to the hospital. Thank you for bringing my favorite Hello Kitty socks. I love how well you know me." So be very specific about what you're thanking them for. And also have an agreement that they have an option to say, "No, I can't help with this right now. Let's find somebody else." Because it's important that there are boundaries, that you have boundaries with each other. And then the third piece is take a moment to reflect about the things that you do for your partner because oftentimes we feel like a burden and we feel like it's just us putting our needs onto our partner. But when we take a step back, it's important to reflect the things that we do for our partners because I'm gonna I'm gonna guess that you are the kind of person who has provided a lot of emotional support for your partner, your spouse, in times when they really needed it the most. So to keep things into balance, and again, not to compare what you do or what he does, but just take the time to reflect on the things that you do for the other person. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, I invite you to type them right in the comments. And also, if you have any questions, leave any questions here, and I'm going to circle back later and read all your questions and all your comments. So I will see you on the next episode of Love with Bipolar. Ciao, ciao.